The sun is sentient. It emerged billions of years ago, and Earth and Mars, at least in the Earth dimension, float around it. That's not a joke or anything. The sun is quite literally a sentient being.
Hey, elephant, I'm more ancient than you. Someday I will engulf the solar system.
Since we're talking about sentience, most of life in the Adventure Time verse seems to have some sort of sentience. Nobody knows when and how and why life really started, or why souls started to be bound to physical bodies. The assumption is that all came out of the monster's consensus, but not much is known. What is confirmed is that
ever since life began on this planet, there have always been embodiments of the four elements: fire, ice, candy, and slime. Across eons and millennia, the four elementals lived and died and lived again.
There's always only one elemental alive during a cycle, and elementals do not share a soul. They are rather chosen individuals, allowing for the contact between the previous elementals and the current elementals as well. Lumps are the so-called anti-element, act as a neutralizer to the other elements. Lumps seem to be connected to the lump dimension, but that would infer that the lump dimension and the earth dimension are interlinked, which to some extent seems to be true. It is more likely that the lump dimension just has a higher concentration of lump, hence the lump people looking more primordial than the other creatures in the multiverse. The same way that other dimensions might have more fire, ice, slime, or candy concentration.
Lumps are the subspace molecular lattice that binds together the scientific and magical force of the moon. More powerful than any one element. It's the force that orders reality into its true shape.
Like any other type of magic, elementals follow the rules of magic elasticity and the magic madness sadness theory. The more elastic the dimension, the stronger the elemental. We can see the difference because primordial incarnations of elementals are able to do magic on a massive scale, and pre-war elementals are barely able to heat up a cup of coffee. Though with enough madness, a pre-war elemental was able to freeze themselves completely without killing themselves, showing that elasticity can be overcome through the commitment of the wizard.
So I went out alone and froze myself. And all of you bit it.
Since the Adventure Time verse follows our timeline to a certain extent, there was also a Jurassic period. One would think that all the elementals should be dinosaurs, but they are not. They're just humanoid creatures. Their species are historically unknown. In the Adventure Time verse, the dinosaur age ended with the Green Catalyst comet. The ice elemental at the time, Urgent's Evergreen, tried to stop the comet, since the comet would most likely wipe out all of life on Earth. For that, he needed the help of the other elementals, Altus, fire, Chessberry, candy, and Slimy D, slime, but they refused to help him.
If this comet hits, we four indeed may perish, but the elements we embody, fire, ice, candy, and slime, will live on.
So Evergreen froze them all and decided to acquire the items himself. Through Evergreen's knowledge, he's able to create the wish-granting crown made of the ruby eyes of the lava dog Magwood, gold, and a bunch of magical wiring. As Evergreen is about to wish the comet away, the lava dog Magwood, now blind and enraged, tracks him down and attacks the castle, trapping him under debris. Luckily for Evergreen, he has a pet mutated dinosaur named Gunther that is able to use the crown. Unfortunately, Evergreen mistreated the dinosaur and never cared about him, not even teaching him basic magical knowledge, so Gunther is unable to use the crown properly and wishes he could be like, or could actually be, Evergreen, cursing the crown forever and taking away all its wish-granting abilities. A version of Gunther is saved in the crown, and every wearer of the crown would eventually have its version saved up in there as well. Editor's note: I never really understood the reason why eventually every wearer of the crown turns into Evergreen, but under further inspection, it's not only that. Magic is inherently tied to sadness and madness, so while Evergreen is depicted as sane, he couldn't be further from such a thing. He is in such a mental state that he straight out challenges a beast directly counter to his powers and tries to use wish magic, something a wizard should know is one of the most dangerous types of magic to ever exist, besides maybe chronomancy. On top of that, every wielder of the crown seems to be influenced by the crown to a certain extent. We can see that previous users were Santa Claus and probably Jack Frost. Simon Petrikov himself added the desire to marry his princess. It seems desires accumulate in the crown over time.
Yes, I see.
It is likely that the green comet's agent of change is the Lich, an embodiment of evil whose only desire is to extinguish all life. He claims to be the last scholar of Golb, although the exact meaning of this is unknown.
I am the ceaseless wheel, the last scholar of Golb. I am your doom.
The Lich lies dormant for millennia, awaiting the right opportunity to rise to power. Quote from Jegim, Adventure Time Chronology. Editor's notes. There are a lot of cryptic creatures in the Adventure Time universe, but the Lich is probably one of the weirdest ones out there. Throughout the show, several origins are offered for the existence of the Lich, but my favorite one is that the Lich is actually an amalgamation of all the pain and suffering that appeared when the big bombs fell. A curse accumulated in a very short period of time, filled with regret and anger, and eventually being distilled in the wish to extinguish all life in the multiverse. This theory is not entirely incompatible with the Lich's role as an agent of change, but it does kind of open a new question of what the Lich actually is at the end of the day.
Starbright, return the chalice to the throne. It's got a cup holder and everything.
Yeesh! Is that Coke and Teppy?
Oh, don't mind that. It's been there for thousands of years.
Before Earth became mundane, magic reigned wild on Earth, which allowed wizards to actually exist. They created a safe place called Wizard City. The original rulers of the city practiced something called dark magic, since they drew their power from Teppy, one of the primordial monsters. After Teppy's death, the original rulers are usurped by magic users that reject the use of dark magic, and Teppy's body was sealed away since the new rulers feared his resurrection.
Millions of years ago, the usurpers of Wizard City hid his body away to deny and suppress the darkness that had been magic's original power.
During this time, the Enchiridion was created. Hundreds or thousands of wizards and witches were involved in his creation, each of them adding written texts, enchantments, and more to it, giving it literal life. The book can be read by everyone since it is automatically translated. It most likely has prophetic knowledge of the future or just recounts of the past. Both can be true at the same time. There are actually two parts of the Enchiridion, one for the wizards and one for the heroes who might serve them. The book for wizards, of course, contains magical knowledge about spells, and the book for heroes are rules and guidelines on how to best serve their wizard masters. We never see the full version of the Enchiridion and only abridged versions of it, since the original book is 8 million pages long. No origin can be found for the Enchiridion, and most likely never will be, especially since there are different iterations of the same book running around. One iteration claims that every 10,000 years the original author, if there is such a thing, is teleported to a time room where they must decide to reset the multiverse to 10,000 years ago or not. The author always chooses to reverse it. Since we've done this thousands of times, you may feel this universe has played out, so to speak. Every other time you decide to go back in time and start over to that moment in the quarry when you were carving your name and your true lover's name into the side of the boulder. When you first conceived of writing the Enchiridion, you were the young wizard who wrote it, body forgotten. When I became sentient enough to tell you, after 10,000 years, I remind you and ask you if you'd like to end it all and let the unknown occur, or if you'd like to go back again and experience another variation of the last 10,000 years. The multiverse is unstoppable. Even if it ends, it will sprout back into existence again, but this time in some new, unknown way, just as it did when all things began. I'm just asking, it's your decision. Visits Enchiridion, Chapter 7. The Enchiridion and Marcy's super secret scrapbook. Editor's notes. Time magic, also known by its formal name, chronomancy, is fucked beyond belief. It is best to just avoid talking or thinking about it. If you want to use it, don't. You might think you are smart, but you're not. Just stop. The Gems of Power, in combination with the Enchiridion, can be used to access the Time Room. It is unknown if every version of the Enchiridion possesses this feature, but the one we see in the show does. We know that at some point, Earth's magical elasticity and frequency started to turn mundane, decreasing the existence of magic on Earth as a whole. The reasons for that happening are unknown, though a simple explanation might be that technology started to emerge and pushed away magic from people's minds. We already know that the entire verse is basically the consensus of a bunch of monsters, so it is not far-fetched that through some sort of consensus of the general population, the Earth turned more and more mundane. One cannot forget that magic requires a lot of training as well as a lot of madness and sadness to be executed proficiently. Having a bunch of sad and mad people running around performing spells is not something even the prehistoric societies would tolerate that much. Editor's notes. In the world of darkness, where you have vampires, wraiths, werewolves, hunters, changelings, and magicians, there is a specific mechanic that concerns the changelings and the magicians. Magicians want to establish consensus. That means that humans in a certain region believe something to be true and therefore it becomes true. The most widely known consensus on Earth is that of the technocracy, and as you can glean from the name, they want to establish science, physical laws, and technology as the consensus. This worldview and consensus, though, is extremely mundane for most sects of the changeling. It is almost poisonous to them. And with further establishment of the technocracy consensus, the more room the changelings and their realm, the dreaming, is restricted. Here, there seems to be something similar going on. With the establishment of technology, the belief in magic might have just diminished and establishing the consensus that magic doesn't really exist. After all, pretty much everything that is possible with magic was or is possible with technology to a certain extent without spell weaving and incantation. It is much safer, faster, and less prone to failure. It works.
All of this just works. It's not, I'm not kidding.
Another explanation might be that there are only a certain amount of magic around, and the more people there are, the more the magic spreads, basically restricting every powerful magic wielder in their ability to do anything. Both reasonable explanations, but ultimately not important since we just know magic existed since the beginning of time and was maybe restricted or regressed for a while.
Whew! A vampire!
Unlike in our universe, the age of the dinosaur was ended by one of the agents of change, but in similar fashion, after the dinosaurs came the age of mammals. Of course, when we talk about mammals, we focus mostly on humans, though in the Adventure Time verse we also need to talk about mammals' cousins, the vampires.
May I come in?
Vampires apparently existed way before us and just went into hiding during the Ice Age. When my dad was trying to wise me up to the ways of the world, he told me that the race of vampires were ancient. He said they'd been on Earth before humans and that when the Ice Age began, they hibernated underground until it was over. Marceline, the Enchiridion, and Marcy's super secret scrapbook. Vampires of Ooh drink the red from a creature's blood. Though they prefer human blood, they can sustain themselves through any red thing out there, like for example an apple.
But it's not the blood that I like, it's the color. I eat shades of red.
Golly!
Vampires reproduce by infecting other mammals through a bite to their neck. Logic would suggest that it doesn't necessarily need to be a specific body part, but that's how they do it. Throughout the mundane human age, vampires stayed mostly hidden, except for appearances in fiction and in folklore like Twilight, Vampire Diaries, True Blood, Buffy the Vampire Slayer, various TV shows and movies, and of course the most well-known vampire, Nosferatu. Just kidding, of course, Dracula. It also seems that the vampire curse also changes infected creatures into some sort of humanoid, the prime example here being the Vampire King that turns out to be just a normal line after the curse is extracted from him. The vampire curse itself seems to be a giant living sheep cloud. Another mythological creature that also exists are werewolves, and like the vampires, they stay mostly hidden during the mundane human age, except for appearances in fiction and folklore like Twilight, Teen Wolf, Buffy the Vampire Slayer, as well as various TV shows and movies. It is notes. The shows mentioned here might or might not have existed in the Adventure Time universe. We know Cheers for a fact exists, but given that some of the media mentioned was after the year 2000s and the big mushroom bomb fell around 2010, our time, all things mentioned might or might have not existed.
We're sunk, bro. This whole place is gonna be a stinking molten dump in a minute.
In our universe, aliens are often depicted as some sort of green or gray-skinned humanoids with big heads, but in the Adventure Time universe, there are actual green-skinned aliens living on Mars. Their body shape is not that different from humans in the show, though they don't seem to have hair. There seems to be some time shenanigans going on with the Martians as well. For once, Glob's helmet reacts to Betty's ancient human DNA, according to herself, and a human called Mosef Mastro Giovanni was apparently involved in the building of the Martian colony. Furthermore, their king is Abraham Lincoln, who seems to be the same Abe Lincoln who got shot. How he landed in the future on Mars is unclear, but it could be that Abe is either an unknown cosmic entity or just a really powerful being. Abe's second in command is Grob, Gob, Glob, and Grod, which is a four-faced being that seems to have some amount of magical power, but they are neither undying nor immortal. They seem to be able to be harmed like any other creature in the universe and can also experience death. Somehow, Grob, Gob, Glob, and Grod spawned a religion on Earth, since Oolanders often utter the phrases,
"Oh my glob! Oh my glob, man! Everyone's dead! Oh my glob! Oh my glob! Oh my glob! Oh my glob! Oh my glob!"
whenever we would say, "Oh my god." Quadruple G's brother is a powerful magician called the Magic Man. Margos, Magic Man's wife, is deleted from reality through the entity of Gob. Nobody knows why Gob decided to visit Mars. The basic assumption is that Gob is somehow attracted to sentient beings, and when they evolve enough, be it technologically, emotionally, or spiritually, Gob visits that place. Consequently, Magic Man started to lose his marbles.
I looked everywhere, you know.
So what?
Every dimension, every dead world. I even wished you back in Prismo's time room. But you were gone, erased, only existing here and here. For hundreds of years I held that sadness, until my magic and science were strong enough to create you from my nightmare.
To prevent further visits from Gob, Magic Man builds a defense system named Magical Automated Resistance Generating Laser Energy Supplier, Margles. Unfortunately, the spell used in the defense system is corrupted and Magic Man loses Margles, metaphorically speaking, a second time, causing him to lose it entirely. Subsequently, Magic Man turns into a kind of a mean trickster demigod. He's exiled from Mars to Earth so that he could learn how to be a person again. One of the reasons, for example, all the Martians have no hair is because Magic Man turned all the water on Mars into hair, causing everyone to drink all their hair.
And what about that one time when he turned all the water into hair? And we all got so thirsty we drank it. And when we drank it, we went bald. Many of us did not recover. And to this day, hide our loss behind groovy headgear.
Mars' connection to Earth can be further underlined with the fact that Quadruple G was the one who stopped Orgalorg from absorbing the powers of another agent of change that was heading towards Earth.
Orgalorg is an ancient cosmic entity who ruled the solar system with his cruel and deadly whims. The Breaker of Worlds. He was seeking ever more power. He desired to intercept a catalyst comet and absorb its essence. Thereby did he offend the King of Mars, who decreed that Orgalorg should be cast down. And yes, he was cast down by the flaming sword of Grob Gob Glob Grod.
Orgalorg was banished to an inhospitable planet where he would forget everything.
And the prophets say that the gravity of the planet did crush and compress Orgalorg into a more powerless and cuddlesome form. Ooh.
Orgalorg is known later as one of the penguins named Gunter that lives with the Simon Petrikov version of the Ice King. Gunter at some point inherits the crown and turns into another version of the Ice King, and he also marries Library Princess. Orgalorg is therefore suppressed under two identity layers, one being Gunter the penguin and the other being Gunter the Ice King. Edit his notes. Gunter is really annoying and he annoys me every day. I wish Glob would at least hinder him in doing bad things and stopping him from annoying me every day when I'm doing important research on everything, literally. Gunter is so difficult. The Yellow Catalyst is never identified, but there is a possibility that Jake the dog might be its latest incarnation. Glob still had his hair during the first coming of Golb, but during his battle against Orgalorg, he's wearing his headgear. Since Glob wears his headgear to hide his baldness, this suggests that the arrival of the Yellow Catalyst comet came after the first coming of Golb. However, this is not confirmed. The arrival of the yellow comet could have come first. Quote from Jegim, Chronology of Adventure Time.